Hey, welcome to a special edition of Coffee with Cory here in Fargo, location 5675 26th Avenue South, Suite 100. We have a special guest here, Colton Brown, class of 2014, Williston High School, and obviously was a student of mine twice, not once, twice, freshman physical science and physics a couple years ago. And we get to visit with him about a lot of different things. But before we get into a lot of his experiences and things we'll talk about, just last night, or just the other night, Williston Coyote Foundation had their special awards night. Can you tell us about that particular, what's that mean to you?
So the Williston Coyote Foundation, obviously they provide tens of thousands of dollars to students. And I think last night they presented $149,000 to 90 students, which is incredible, first of all. But second of all, just being able to create a scholarship and then just each year give back to kids in the community where I grew up in and help just, even if it's some textbooks or if it's going to help cover their food for the first semester or whatever it might be, it just helps give them that opportunity to continue their education and help give back to society later on in life. And it started 6 years ago, funny enough. And I, in high school, I would have, if you had been like, oh, Colton, you're going to start a scholarship one day, I would have been like, for what?
Yeah, it would have shocked me too. So you're 4 years out of high school, and you come to the foundation. You said, I want to do this and give back.
Yeah, well, and so it kind of fell into like a really, I don't even want to say weird place in my life because I was exactly where I needed to be at the time. But I had just dropped out of college.
Okay.
I went home to work in the oil and gas industry. I was working at NOV downhole, and I had saw that the scholarships were coming up, and actually one of my best friends, Josh Drew, who's also class of 2014,
okay,
he was the youngest one ever to start a scholarship. He started it.
So you didn't beat him?
I didn't beat him, no. Okay. And I had saw the scholarships, and I remember he had done it, which kind of, in essence, inspired me to do it.
Yep.
And I was just like, man, like, at the time, it was like, well, I didn't make it through school, and I struggled, my late high school career, my early college career, and I was like, well, I want to give opportunity for kids as well. And so kind of what's cool about my scholarship is there's no educational requirements, there's no sports requirements, it's strictly a character requirement.
Character.
It's called the Golden Heart Scholarship.
Golden Arch.
Golden Heart.
Oh, Golden Heart. So
Golden
my
Heart.
hearing's bad too, Colton. We're not talking Golden Arches like McDonald's down here. Okay. All right.
And it's called the Golden Heart Scholarship, and it's really just, it's to give back to a kid that throughout their high school they're recognized as just being a kind-hearted person. Long story short.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
And so it's really cool because I think it goes unrecognized.
Yeah.
You think of the nicest people that you've ever met in your entire life, and hopefully good things come to them. It's like,
right.
Well, they're also going to school, so it's like, what can we do for that? And that's just like where the whole idea started, and the name even came from. I had asked probably about a dozen people. I was like, if you were to describe me in like 3, 4 words, like what would they be? And a lot of people would, they said that you're kind, you're funny, you're empathetic, you're caring, and I was kind of like trying to put all these words together to figure out, well, I'm not going to call it the kind, empathetic, nice scholarship. And then I was like, oh, Golden Heart. And
I like it. It's got a good ring.
Yeah. And
no connection to Donald Trump.
No.
It's just Colton Brown.
Yeah.
No, that is awesome. So do you know who got it this year? Or?
Like I said, I'm bad with names. I watched it this morning, and I was like, I'm going to take a wild guess, because if I'm right, I'm going to feel really good. But I think her name is Rita.
Rita?
I think so.
I'm not
and
sure.
If it wasn't, I'm sorry.
Rita, congratulations. That's awesome. And do you know who your first one was?
No.
Putting you on the spot. That's okay.
I have all the letters that, they usually write like thank you letters.
Yeah.
And I have them all tucked away in a shoebox.
Yeah.
And it's fun just to like keep adding to the collection.
Yeah.
And so like once a year, usually once I get the new one, I go find the rest, and I just give a read through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been cool. So.
Well, I guess, those all would, describe you on my, from me to you, I would say. The other one I'd add to it probably is maybe shock a little bit, maybe shock and awe. I don't know. So here's a story about Colton. So we just remodeled the rooms in the science labs. It was Miss Viscajon and I back to back, and, there's an old building, and we got the funds to redo the science labs because ours was not in good shape. But anyway, so we had coming into the room, there was big cabinets, and Colton on numerous occasions would try to scare me. And so he had been up there, and I come in as the class starts, and he goes, ah! And he scared the daylights out of me. So that was at least one. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And then sometimes, and you did this one multiple times, and I think this one scared me the most. So we got a big front desk about 8 feet long, and then there's a little space for my feet and stuff. But I usually come in, look at the class, start taking attendance, and you were down there, and you grabbed me, and my anyway, so that's one of the things I remember because
man. Well, and it's funny that you say that because it just reminds me, like, even through all of my college courses and looking back in high school, teachers I really connected with, like, I don't want to say I was a class clown to where I was like too disruptive, but for the most part, like, especially teachers I really took a liking to, it just joking around and having fun in that aspect.
Yeah,
was
keeping it light.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that describes you well. I mean, I don't remember you being extremely disruptive at all.
Because I liked you.
Yeah, you like me. That's good. You're here now. Yeah, but no, I appreciate you. I appreciate that time of my life too. That was my last year teaching physics, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's maybe. What else? Anybody else or teachers or things you want to bring up that you remember in high school? Like, this was a cool story, or?
Well, I would say one of my most memorable ones, which there's quite a few with this specific teacher, but and a lot of students unfortunately don't get to have him, was Jim Geierman.
Oh yeah.
He was one of the, in that time of my life, he was just such an important factor into like my character development when I was a young mind.
Yep.
He was an inspiration to my young mind, and I still have it to this day. It was on like a tardy slip or something that he wrote to me, and but he'd given me this piece of paper that said, "You can be gold sometimes. Appreciate yourself when you are." And I just think back to some of the times in high school to where I would come in and he'd be like, "What's going on?" And then we're like, or it was, "What are you doing? Like I know you're brighter than this. Like, why are you acting up like that?"
Yeah.
But also, I would say Mr. Sykes.
Mr. Sykes.
Him and I were pretty close. I still love to see him, but just similar to him, laughter is just something that really keeps his day going and having fun and smiling. And that every time, like I would say, I entered your classroom or his classroom or Geierman's classroom, that's how it always felt. It felt lighthearted, it felt fun, and it felt like I belonged or wanted to be there.
Yeah, and I think there's been studies too. If you can bring laughter in the classroom, it helps people learn and you remember things. Not to get in that side of things, but Mr. Geierman to me was one of the most kindest people that I've ever met. One of the people that came to me, I seem like, or just showed that kindness year after year at the high school. Not that there wasn't other people that were kind, but he was certainly a cut above everyone. It seemed like he didn't matter, what year, what day. He was always one of those people you could count on being kind.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. Rest in peace, Mr. Geierman, and surely missed. And Mr. Sykes is still teaching.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Well, and I gotta give a special shout out, Jen Radovich, Georgie's daughter.
Yep.
She
legendary too.
Yeah, legendary. Had him as well. I got in my fair amount of trouble with him, but. Jen, I think I was in Jen's classroom. It was like my tutor room, but like looking back, like she's done some thankless work over the years, and she was also just such a key aspect into my later high school years of, same thing. Well, but then also having my back.
Yeah.
Like, she was a phenomenal just mentor in that time as well. And even though it might not have been, your typical sciences or Englishes or maths, she was still there to show up for character development.
Right, a very monumental piece of your development. And
absolutely.
And she's still doing it. Yeah, I agree with you. She's one of those that doesn't get mentioned maybe sometimes, like science and math or whatever. But no, good shout out. Well, let's go this way. Maybe what do you want to share with us? Maybe describe your childhood and bringing to where you're at today.
Oh man, and this is where it can get lengthy.
Yeah, that's okay.
Man, so growing up, my folks are from Williston, and some students might have had them, some students might not have, but Mr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews, those are my folks, and
yeah,
my parents split when I was pretty young, which happens,
Yeah.
And I was actually living in Germany at the time. I was born in Texas, lived there for a few years. We moved to Germany. My dad was in the military.
Yeah.
Parents decided that splitting would be best, and we ended up back in Williston, North Dakota. Mm-hmm. And so even as a kid, the only reason I knew North Dakota is because my grandparents lived, my family lived there. And so moved back there when I was 8, and then just kind of went through. You were the new kid in school, and like I remember
What grade was that? Do you remember?
I moved there in 2nd grade.
Okay.
And like 3 months until the year was over, and I remember like the teacher introducing, this is our new student. This is Colton. He's from Germany, and then everyone's like, "Oh, do you speak German?" And I was like 9, just saying no, and I was just like, "What the heck?" And but just as the years like progressed,
What elementary school?
Hagen.
Yep. Hagen Hawks.
Yep. Man, and I still try to go back there like once a year and see a couple of my old teachers just to say hi. I really.
Yeah.
And I mean, growing up, I had a bowl cut, glasses. I was kind of like clumsy. I wasn't that great at sports or anything. But then just growing up, went middle school, high school, sports. When I was kind of going through puberty, that's when I started getting a little taller, a little more muscular, a little faster, and this and that. And I really clung to. I'd say track and field and basketball for the most part. Those are like my 2 favorite sports that I got to do during high school. And it's funny to look back because I was a pretty smart kid. I had pretty good grades up until about my sophomore year, and then I just really stopped being a great student. Not saying I misbehaved that like bad in that way, but just like wasn't doing my homework, and I wasn't really putting in the effort to get the good grades because I was like, man, I don't care for this. Or it was really in the classrooms where I connected with the teachers, where I said, wanted to be there. And I graduated high school, middle of my class, 110 out of 220. And
at least you weren't 220.
There's nothing wrong with being 220.
Yeah, nothing wrong with 220. 220 is good. Well, yeah, anyway. Yeah.
And I had a 2.2 GPA, and I was going to Bismarck State in the following fall.
Okay.
And so looking back, I think back, I wish I would have tried a little harder in high school, because maybe I would have went like a different way with education wise. But then I went to Bismarck State my first semester, and I failed out.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Williston
You're not
State.
alone. You know that too.
No, I know.
A lot of people do that. Yeah.
And then after my second semester, I passed 2 of my 6 classes, and one of them was yoga.
You still passed?
I still passed, but after my freshman year, I had like a 0.9 GPA.
Yeah.
Which, like, I look back at, it's all part of the story.
Yeah. Part of who you are, and
I wouldn't recommend it because I went through a lot of.
It did cost money, right?
It cost money, and there's a lot of trial and error, and kind of undigging the grave I dug myself. But then it was like the next year, I really just started finding the motions, and I started getting into the groove of things, and I was doing really well. 2017, I finished my associates in arts and science from Williston State, and then I'd stayed in Williston for another year. I came to NDSU in 2018, and then I
became a Bison.
Yeah, roll herd. I'm a Longhorns fan though, where the original horns were created.
Texas, that's right. You're born in Germany.
No, born in Texas.
Born in Texas, went to Germany.
Moved to Germany and then moved back. And then, funny enough, I was here for a semester and a half, and I called my mom one day, and I was sitting in my apartment, and I'd asked her, I'm like, Mom, if you were doing something that you weren't happy doing, what would you do? She said, well, I would stop doing it, and I would go do something else. And without missing a beat, I said, okay, I'm dropping out of college. and she was like, okay. And within 2 weeks, I was working. I was back home in Williston. I was
working oil field.
Well, not right away, but I was working 2 jobs, 80 hours a week. I was dealing Texas Hold'em out at the State Line Casino, and I was helping my uncle out at the Parks District, just doing lawn care with the parks. And then about a month and a half later, I was at NOV. And then...
NOV is an oil field company.
Yep,
right?
yep. National Oil Well Varco, their downhole division. We tore down and rebuilt mud drilling motors. And then in that year, I was doing great. I was like, I don't need a college education.
You're making good money.
Making good money. I got a new truck. I'm living with my mom. Like, I'm stacking up the bank to paying off all this debt.
Yeah.
It was a good time. And then COVID happened.
Oh. Yeah.
And I remember sitting at work, and we watched the oil prices hit zero. And there's this PA system.
I forget about that. That was crazy.
Yeah. And there's this PA system, and it goes like, and every time it comes, it's either somebody's making an announcement or they're calling somebody.
This is on your company, not in your head.
No, this is in the company. This is in the shop we were working in.
Oh, the shop, okay. Because sometimes those things kind of, in my head, just boop, boop, like, no, just kidding. All right, go ahead.
And every time it come on, we'd both look up. It was like toolbox meeting over by here, because we all thought that day we were going to lose our jobs.
Oh,
and because we're like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I remember I made it until the beginning of May. And it was like May 4th, I think. May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
And the 4th was not with me that day. I got laid off. And
so you lasted, okay.
Yeah,
and that, when it first kind of went down, I think like March 22nd, 3rd?
It was St. Patrick's Day, March 17th.
Okay.
And I was in Minot with Josh Drew.
Okay.
Celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember got laid off that day, and it was kind of already in the back of my mind, like going back to school. But in that moment, I'm like, I got nothing to fall back on. And so I was like, I had come up with this plan. I was like, 2 years, I can finish my undergrad, go back, get my engineering degree. And so that fall, I came back to Fargo, and I told myself, if I don't get through, like if this first semester is a struggle, we'll find a different major. We'll find something else to do.
Yeah.
And then I got through it. And then I'm like, okay, well now we're cooking with oil. We're going.
Yeah.
And
you graduated.
Yep. And so
with an engineering degree.
Yep. And so I got my civil engineering degree from NDSU in 2022.
2022. Let's pause for a second here. Most people don't quite understand, and maybe more than I think, but tell us what civil engineering means, and I think a lot of people would be interested in getting a description of what that is.
Absolutely. And so one of my favorite ways to kind of just describe engineering is, the building that we're in right now, civil engineers. The roads that we drive on, civil engineers. The water that comes to your shower, civil engineers. The airport runways, and the airport buildings itself, civil engineers. And so really, civil engineering is what I like to describe as big infrastructure engineering mainly. And there's 5 different disciplines. You have your geotech side, you have your water side, your transportation, your structurals, and your environmental side. And so And like, for example, DOT projects that go on, that touches all kinds of different aspects of civil engineering, from the environmental impacts. They have to do soil borings to know what kind of like earth that we are building roads on. There's the transportation side, which is the roadway itself. When you do throw bridges in there, structural, and then the waters, especially on the municipal side in town, any sanitary, so when you flush your toilet, the water that's coming to your house, or when it rains, like it did today, it all goes into underground. And it wasn't until like my first inspection project that like I really understood all of the stuff that's underground, because it's not just sewers as well, but it's our fiber optics for our internet, it is our electricity. There's so many different aspects of it.
Yeah, no, that was a great description. A lot of detail there, but civil engineering encompasses so much. It's a wide, broad range, and that's good. So you graduated 2022 NDSU Bison Civil Engineering.
Yep, and then I had actually initially accepted a job offer with a company in South Carolina, and I was going to move there after graduation. And then I got accepted into grad school.
Oh.
And it stressed me out so much, because I was like, do I want winters in grad school, or do I want to go work and make money and be like an hour and a half from the beach?
Tough decision.
Well, and true story, I was so stressed out. For about a month, I was like going back and forth on the decision. And there was one night I was so stressed, it was making me like sick. I went and grabbed this silver dollar I had, and I flipped it, and I said heads, grad school, tails, South Carolina. I caught it, flipped it, it said heads. That same night I had got all my stuff submitted for grad school, and I'd emailed this company in South Carolina and said, hey, I can't come work for you guys because I'm gonna go to grad school. And so then I spent 2 years in grad school.
You didn't tell them about the coin flip.
No.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's a way to, sometimes you got to make it.
Yeah, and I threw the coin away after that because I was like, dang it. And then I was in grad school for my MBA for 2 years, and then so I was working full time as an engineer, and I was doing my grad school, and now here I am. A year ago I graduated with my master's, and now I'm just working and kind of just finding my way in life and enjoying myself.
Yeah, you're living, and you get to go to different places, and you're traveling all over. Let's go. I mean, so you're going to Argentina next week?
Monday.
So what? Tell us about that. Why are you going to Argentina? What's happening there?
So it's not about what you know; it's about who you know, right? And I know a guy who won a dove hunting trip in Argentina.
D-O-V-E, dove?
Yep, dove.
Okay.
And he reached out to me, said that 2 of his buddies canceled on him to go on this trip in a year's time. This was last March. And he's like, do you want to go? I said, yeah, that'd be sick. And then he was like, do you know anybody? I said, give me a minute. And I called one of my best friends in Williston. I said, hey, do you want to go to Argentina to go dove hunting? And he goes,
sorry, it's one of those things. All right.
And he was like, when? I told him next May. And he said, and at this point we hadn't even gone to Ireland yet. Like that was our first trip on our list. He's never been out of the country, so he's like, sure, let's go. Yeah. And so we got it all set up, and now, we usually try to set up a trip that's in between his birthday and my birthday. It's almost like a dual birthday trip.
Dual birthday party.
Exactly. And so this year it's Argentina. Last year is Ireland.
Oh, that's cool. And so you're just going to explore, find the doves?
Yep. And so like we're going, it's a guided hunt. It's on privately owned land. What's really cool, one of the coolest aspects of it, I think, so it's a free-for-all. Basically, you can shoot as many as you want. You can.
Do you cook them up?
They have chefs that cook them up at night, that clean them, and they cook them.
It tastes like chicken?
I don't know. I've never had it.
So you've never went dove hunting?
No.
This is getting better.
I've never been to Argentina.
No, no, neither have I. I think I've been dove hunting maybe once, but I don't remember if we cooked them up and it tastes like chicken or not. But anyway.
If it's anything similar to pheasant, then I think I'll be all right.
Yeah. I mean, people eat them. I mean.
Absolutely. Well, and then anything that we don't eat, they donate back to local communities.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I think that's a really cool aspect of it. So obviously it's a sporting trip for us guys from America.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's nice to know that like it's just not going to waste.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just going down to tear them up and leave them there.
Yeah, you're giving back. And so you also talked about, prior to the the version here of us talking on this, you've been to 3 different countries within the last year. Can you touch on those trips a little bit before we get into some other stuff?
No, absolutely. So actually, I'm going to touch on a lot of things about the traveling the past year.
Okay.
So, and really what it all started with was there was just this idea in December of 23 to where I text my buddy, the one I'm going to Argentina with, and I said, Ireland or Iceland? And he looked up and it was like, he's like, best place for single guys to go travel to. And like, here's this list. And because the 3 of us that were going, we're all single. Yeah, we're all single.
Yeah, makes sense.
And he was like, Ireland was above Iceland. So let's go to Ireland. And, you know, and because there's some Irish music that we like and all this other stuff. And
do the Irish jig?
Yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. And so 2 days later, booked a flight, and then we had 5 months to prepare. Mm-hmm. And it was my first time traveling out of the country with my friends, but as an adult. The one of them, I think he's been up to Canada and like a few places in the Midwest, but it hasn't like really traveled. Neither of them have really traveled.
Yeah,
like
so this is one of his first big trips.
And so it was really just a big trip for all of us. And we ended up going, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do with my best friends.
Yeah.
And I would tell anybody, I would say, like, it was one of those things where they say is like, oh, like the trip made it out of the group chat. Well, and the easiest part about the trip making out of the group chat was we talked about it, we picked dates, we bought tickets, and then it's set in stone. We have to go now.
Yeah.
And so we went.
Are you any of you guys Irish?
I am.
I was gonna say, I bet you're Irish.
and we got a rental car. And so it wasn't toured, it was nothing. We got a rental car, and we had a few places that we wanted to go and see. And we literally just drove around. We drove around in Ireland. In size comparison, is most comparable to the state of Indiana. So it's not entirely huge.
Yeah, it's smaller than North Dakota.
Yeah, it's and I was like looking at I put like this on Google Maps how long it would take to drive around the island. It was like 11 hours.
Huh. Okay.
I could easily make that trip in a day, but obviously we're stopping all these places.
Yeah.
And it was castles, beaches, scenic routes, the mountains. One of our favorite places that we stopped, 2 of them, and so obviously there's Dublin. Yeah. It's a fun place. It's a very popular place, but we stopped in this place called Killarney that was on the southwest part of Ireland, and we kind of went pub hopping that night. And believe it or not, when we think of, say, bars in America, you know, pretty large-ish establishments or even restaurants
can fit 20, 30 people at least.
Comfortably.
Yeah.
But these pubs are so small. There's one walking lane, and for Irish people are usually they're smaller than Americans just on average size, but me and my buddy are walking through there. We're almost like mountain of men, just trying to make our way through and make ourselves small. But it was live music almost in every pub. The food was just
fun environment.
It was delicious, and it was just.
Is it warm beer or cold beer?
Cold beer.
Cold beer.
Yeah. I don't think I'd ever drink a warm beer.
Well, I think in Germany, isn't there warm beer? I don't know.
I haven't been there. If that's the case, I don't think I want to go.
Mr. Abel was telling me about that, I believe, but we can ask him another day. But okay.
Well, speaking of Abel, I ran into him in the Fargo airport.
Okay.
Just recently, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I saw him. pretty distinct guy. Like you have somebody as a
Bald.
teacher, bald, exactly. And but I saw him, and I kind of walked over. Oh, I was going to Arizona that week. This is back in January.
Yeah.
And I walked over and I said, "Hey, Abel." And he looks over. He's like, Colton. I'm like, "Hey, how are you? It's been so long."
And you took German from him, right?
Yep, for 2 years.
Yep.
And then, but back just real quick on that Ireland thing, dude. That was, I would tell anybody that it was the best experience I've ever had with my friends, and it would be. I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I tell anybody, especially in their younger years, like, do it while you can.
Experience it.
Because, you know, we don't have kids, we don't have wives. Like, it's the opportunity just to go.
Yeah.
And then I would say, when there was another international trip that I took.
So let's pause on that for a second. So you went as single men. You've told me before we start talking, you have a significant other. Did you meet her in Ireland?
No.
Okay, let's go on to the next story. Or the next country.
No, I met her here in Fargo.
Oh, in Fargo. Well,
Yep.
Fargo.
Yep. And she
where I
actually
met my wife, Fargo.
Well, and she actually inspired me a lot, like with the whole traveling thing, because she's done a lot of solo traveling, which ended up leading me to a solo kind of backpacking trip to Japan a couple months ago.
Japan, cool.
Yeah, on like.
I think I was following you there. Okay. Let's hear about Japan.
And I was gonna say, like, that was like a 2-week impromptu, bought the ticket, like, oh, well, I'm gonna go to Japan for like 5 days. And I bought the ticket, and I told my mom when I saw her on her birthday, we're out for dinner, and I was like, hey, by the way, next week I'm going to Japan. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, like I don't, because I was in between jobs at the time, and so I think the best time to travel is when you're in between jobs, because, like, well, what else you got to do?
Right. You don't have to go to work on Monday. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, when I got back from Japan, I got back to Fargo at 8:30 p.m. and I was at work the next morning at 8. I didn't have 12 hours to decompress.
And so you got a new job while you're in Japan.
I wish.
No.
I had gotten it before.
Oh,
it was just
okay.
The
In
start
between.
date was.
Yeah, gotcha. So Germany, you know a little bit of German, 9 German.
Yeah.
Okay, how about Japan? You got any Japanese words?
Yeah. I would say. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot.
That's okay. Well, let's come back.
Kakui is cool.
Katsui?
Kakui.
Kakui?
Kakui. It means cool.
Cool.
And so there's actually, I'd say, like, Cory-san, Cory-san kakui desu, and that means Cory is cool.
I like it.
I'm pretty sure. I hope my Duolingo's not failing me
I know
right
a
now.
couple things. Not ni hao. I think that's Chinese.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I don't know Japanese, but
It'd be
so
konnichiwa.
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 Ah. So just describing the two countries, because you're talking about kindness and you're a kind person and a golden heart. You look at Ireland, sounds like a lot of kind people. Japan, I mean, what was the more warm feeling coming from?
I loved Japan.
Really?
More than, like, that was probably the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my entire life.
No kidding.
I stayed in hostels. I met a lot of different people every night. I did something new every day. And then just meeting, like, you go into these Japanese restaurants, and I can't read Japanese to save my life.
I can't either.
But so they give you American menus. But I remember there's this one place in Osaka that I'd sat down as a sushi joint. Best sushi I've ever had. Coming back to America, I was like, God, I really messed up, because now I can't. It's tough to eat it here.
Yeah.
But I was sitting there, and I was eating sushi, and I had ordered some sake, and there was a Japanese fella next to me, and, like, he kind of tapped me, and he had some sake, and he was like, and they say kanpai, and so kanpai means cheers.
Cheers. Huh.
And so had a couple of just small shots of sake with him, and then he, there's this misconstrued idea that all Japanese people speak good English. Most of them don't.
Yeah, but 95% probably don't, do they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so he looked at me, and he pointed and said, "Very good," and I said, "Yes, absolutely, very good." it's just like an interaction like that where I was like, man, I could do this all day. And I got back to America. I had 4 words when I was over there. And it was basically just me being able to say hello, goodbye, yes, no, and also 5 words, and excuse me. Mm-hmm. That otherwise I was pointing, and that was
it.
But it's crazy to see they take so much pride in what they do. Their environment's clean. Everybody's like very respectful, and everybody moves with purpose. And it's so efficient in their public transit system. Also because it's very small. Yeah. Compared to the U.S.
And you said Ireland or the Irish were small. I mean, were Japanese bigger?
No, smaller.
So you're a bigger guy.
Yeah, I walk around and it's like walking around through a elementary school. You just see over everybody. There's nothing against that one.
No,
they can't help it. But yeah, no, that was, and so it was just the food, the environments, the people, and like I'm not a city guy.
Yeah.
Like
you're North Dakota, grew up in North Dakota. It's tough to be a city. I mean, I enjoy the city.
No, absolutely. But Tokyo, I was like, I could live here. I loved Tokyo. It was like, and it's crazy to think just the amount of people. There's no trash anywhere. Like
clean.
It's so clean.
You see any bonsai trees, like small?
No, I don't recall, no, but...
You know what I'm talking about, like Karate Kid, right? That's what became famous.
Yeah, but I don't remember seeing any. But I saw a few cherry blossoms, and that was like just really nice. I was like, oh, it's super cool.
Okay, so we got Argentina, that's coming up. So Japan, we had Ireland. What was the next one?
I'm trying to plan Thailand and Indonesia.
Oh, wow.
This winter.
Yeah.
And then next year I have... Mount Kilimanjaro in South Africa, or in Africa, Tanzania on the list, and then I would like to get back to actually Argentina and go do the Patagonia.
Cool.
But those are like the main 3 on the list. That's kind of the direction we're heading with traveling. So
yeah, so that's a lot, and you really you're living as an experience. You're not getting things. You want those experiences outside and around and different areas, traveling.
Well, yes. When what's crazy is so like North Dakota. I think North Dakota is such a great place to live. It's so simple. It's small. Like we're like, oh, we're going on a quick trip to Fargo or Williston. It's just and like it's like 6 hours. What's 6 hours? You know, that's I take an afternoon off from work and I'm there by dinner time.
Yeah.
But North Dakota, outside of indigenous culture and our Middle European roots, we miss out on a lot of culture and diversity, which is all around the world.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Yeah.
And I feel like we get into this bubble to where like it's very comfortable here. You know, there are people all around. We come into Meg-a-Lattes across the state, and it's like
we're like home at Williston.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's going over and just
getting out of your comfort zone.
Getting out of my comfort zone.
In your travel, your walk. Let's talk about your walk, your faith walk. Just a little bit, if you want to. You've experienced something. You've gone through some. Tell us about that. Your faith walk.
My faith walk, and so, I feel they're all giant undertakings of stories, and so I always try to figure out where should I start.
Yeah.
But I grew up in having faith.
Yeah.
I remember going to church. Most Sundays when we were in North Dakota, especially if I was coming just back to visit, I'd go with my aunt and uncle. I grew up Lutheran. I've been told that I was a stellar Sunday school student. I was always willing to help and this and that, and then throughout high school is where it really started to dwindle off. Real quick, I do want to give a small shout out to this guy who has been a man of faith for as long as I've known him, and if there was ever any doubt in my mind, as like I can't ever say I don't believe, because like if there is one, like this guy he's the guy that walks so proudly with his faith and his relationship, and that's Sean Bryland from New Hope.
Okay.
And I started going to youth group at New Hope in like high school, but something like as I reflect back, when I look back when I was younger, And what kind of made me lose my faith is I was asking for things selfishly. I wanted this and I wanted that.
It's so easy to.
It's
to
so
be
easy.
selfish, yeah,
And growing up, without having the idea that when we talk about, when you ask God for things, when you're a kid, it's like, oh, well, I want the new toy, or I want this, or I want that, and to where instead, and that's where I kind of lost my way with it, because I was like, you're not real. You're not giving me what I want.
Yeah.
If you are real, that's how this works, right?
Yeah.
I ask and you deliver.
Yeah.
And I look back, and that's where it kind of fell off. And then I got into college, and I was just going my own way,
Yeah.
and a lot of heavy hitting things in my life that, my own personal struggles I dealt with, and whether it was failing school or relationship issues or just lack of confidence or whatever it might have been, that really just led me astray from that relationship. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until, I want to say 2-ish years ago, a little more, or about 3 years ago, when I was going through graduating with my undergrad, there's a couple of kids in my class that I just started having conversations with them mm-hmm. about what does God look like in your life, or like what and at this time I was just like, don't know if I should or shouldn't, but like I like to learn, I like to be curious, and my curiosity led me to asking these questions. And there's this one kid, his name was Cam, and he talked about his relationship with God was they grow together. And at the time, I couldn't really comprehend it. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Or like, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's sometimes hard to understand and grow together, yeah.
And I remember I was attending this one church in Moorhead that it was kind of non-denominational, and I'd show up, and I remember like one of the biggest things I looked at was there were these people that they would show up, and it's Sunday morning, 9 in the morning, I was out causing trouble the night before, and then I go to church the next morning, and all of a sudden I'm just like, how are they so happy at 9 in the morning? Like, what is going on?
And they hadn't gone to Meg-a-Latte yet?
They hadn't gone to Meg-a-Latte.
There's something about this.
Yeah. And I see these people come in, and they're hugging, and they're happy, and I had went there a few times, and then one day I was sitting there, and I had said, I'd really like somebody just to talk to after service today. And I was just sitting there thinking, and then afterwards, there was this fella, I don't remember his name, but he came up and he talked to me. And I was like, coincidence or what? And so, and that kind of put kept putting the seed in my head. And then a few months later, I started seeing somebody who was pretty instrumental into like my walk with faith too, like, because they had said, well, faith is important to them, and I told them where I was at with it, mm-hmm. and they were very respectful about it, and I was very appreciative of it, and like we started going to church together, and you'd almost sit in on these services, and you would be like, was somebody like spying on me this week? Like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then I really started.
It was really hitting home, or hitting, and really connecting with you.
And I started having more and more conversations with people, and really my biggest struggle when it came to my relationship with faith was forgiveness. Yeah. And I was like, well, I know how much trouble I've caused these past 10 years. Like, what says I am deserving of forgiveness? And I couldn't put my finger on it. And then it was the summer that my friend Josh, with the scholarship, he was getting married, and I just wanted his pastor, I kind of gotten to know him over a couple days, and I was sitting there after the wedding, and just outside talking to him before he left, and I said, talk to me, tell me about kind of like, how do you learn to forgive yourself? Yeah. And he kind of walked me through like his story too, to where when he came into his relationship, like he wasn't, straight and narrow and been doing this his whole life. It was just something, that he grew into, and then that it happened. And then it was kind of at that moment where like I started learning the act of forgiveness and grace and giving myself grace. With myself.
And that's huge. I think people sometimes can forgive others, can forgive things that happened, but if they don't start with themselves, it's so hard to move forward and grow. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. And then I would say when it was after that, I was really leaning into it, and my trial by fire, the pinnacle of like, if I'm gonna lean into this, I need to lean into it now, was later that year, my girlfriend and I had broken up, and I was sitting there thinking, like, I've been doing all the right things, why would this happen?
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, I had two options. I could lean on my faith to be like, I'm gonna heal through this, I'm gonna be okay, or I can be like, you're not real, this is all a sham, this and that. And I took the former. I leaned on it so hard. And I remember that next week I was in church, I was at service, I was sitting in my usual spot. And I remember after service was over, I wanted to sit there a little bit longer and just have a few extra moments of prayer and just really lean into it. And there's this guy that came over, and somebody that I needed in that moment, that everyone had left, and I'm sitting there by myself, and he had sat, and he was like, and we had talked, and I remember just being in tears, and I'm like, it's hard, I hurt, I don't understand why this is happening. And we talked and we prayed, and then ever since then I've just seen this snowball, and I've started getting just more and more involved, and like just talking to people at church and at service, and I remember it was after that, I was leading up to finishing my master's. I went back to Williston for the summer, and I came back, and I was just talking to some of the leaders of church. I was attending my buddies who married them. He is part of a different church here, and just taking as much faith and godly like experiences as I could that were on like just a weekly basis, which led into just like learning the appreciation of like what life has in store for me, and as long as I continue to trust that process and continue to have faith in something bigger than myself, and in this case it's God. And
we pause there for just a second. I think that you said there are a couple good things that resonate with me, is that trust that process, trust God's plans. And I think so many people, including myself, I'm like, what? This wasn't in my plan. Well, how did this happen? And I think maybe we'd put a plug too to, obviously you've had some experiences that, where are you at here? Where are you going to church?
I go to church at Prairie Heights here in Fargo.
Prairie Heights. So check it out. So go ahead and continue.
Well, and I was going to say, even our lead pastor, Beth, she is just a phenomenal character. And one of my favorite things that really resonated with me, like going to church, is like, I was there one day, and we're having kind of like a tough service, like a tough sermon, what we were talking about that day. And she had told people, she's like, listen, today we're going to be talking about something difficult. Whether you guys agree or disagree, we love that you're here. And we hope if you take anything away today, is just you take away some constructive thought, some critical thinking, and you don't have to believe in what we believe, but we love that you're here. Yeah. And I was like, I respect that so much, because I feel like something that's happened over time, and I think it's starting to kind of go away from that, was just like, so many people view the church as you have to believe in what we believe in to the book and this and that, to where at the end of the day, it's like, man, like I think it's so beautiful, just people that get to have a relationship. Yeah. And instead of looking at it as religion, they look at it as a relationship. Yeah. And
that's good.
And listening to her husband like have a couple services, like some of their other like special speakers that came into kind of like they record them and put them on, let them talk, or they have them up there in like a live interview type deal. It was just awesome. And then so once I came back from construction this last fall, I was working through just like kind of figuring out who I am and like what I want to do, and I found a lot of good sense of community, like especially within my church. And I joined a men's group. And I've been wanting to join it for like a year and a half, and I just kept saying, no, I don't want, imposter syndrome, I don't want to be a poser when I go. And I ended up going, and I got to meet these guys, and then I see them in church, and then we were sitting there, and we have this thing called, I believe it's called Faith Night, And I went to faith night mainly as like, I just want to be supportive of other people in their journey. And the guy that runs the men's group, he was like, that's why I'm going too. And I was like, okay, well, I'll see you there. And then when I was sitting there, and I got put into this small group, and I kind of told a more extended version of my story. And by time I got done telling my story, I was like, and I've been like thinking about getting baptized, but same thing, imposter syndrome. I don't want to be a poser. I don't want people to look at me and say, like, man, like you're BSing us. And I was just like, man. But by the time I told that story, I was like, I'm gonna get baptized.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a lot of fear in it still, because I want to tell my mom and my dad, because I don't have family here in Fargo, but we do the online services, and I remember.
And you grew up Lutheran.
Yep,
and so you're probably baptized as a child.
As a child.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of big emotion just going on with it, and I remember before the service started, because I was there for both of them, I was getting baptized at the later one. I texted my parents and I was like, hey, like, here's where you guys can watch this if you want to, like, no biggie if you don't. And I remember sitting there in the first service and just watching people, and we call it getting dunked. And watching these people get dunked, and they come out and they're just,
pumped.
And that really calmed a lot of my nerves.
Yeah.
And then I got to do it in the second one, and I remember just opening up my phone afterwards to my mom and my dad texting me, and like just the amount of pride that they had in their son. And I remember I was sitting there and I was tearing up, and but it was just the support I got from that was incredible. And then I even made a post on Facebook later on, and it's kind of what we're doing here, and and what I called it was just like below the tip of the iceberg, because the image we present ourselves is mainly the tip of the iceberg, but there's always so much more that happens beneath.
Yeah, that's a great description. That's good. That's really good.
And then here we are. It's been just an incredible opportunity, incredible journey, and like especially with my relationship, it's nice to lay all my worries on the table, that like they will get sorted out, or it'll work itself out.
Yeah.
Instead of me having to handle everything too, because that was another big one. Was wanting to control everything.
Yeah, you want to control everything. And you can give your burdens to him. And I obviously haven't talked to you a whole lot in the last 10 years, but living through you, or at least seeing, or not living through, but seeing your growth, or seeing your experiences, over the years, and what you said it earlier about seeing people joyful at 9 o'clock or whatever, and it seems like you have that peace now, and as a piece of who you are, and that is so certainly happy. I'm happy for you, and want to celebrate you. So kudos to you. That's awesome. And I think hopefully people hear this and can be encouraged by that. And you're 28? 29?
I turned 29 on Sunday.
Yeah, so hey, that's right, a couple days away. I saw that. Okay, so, but yeah, that's a wonderful story, and thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely, man.
And really just boils down to this. I had somebody had sent me something, or maybe it was a scroll, or Pastor Craig Rochelle. I don't know if you know who that is on a Life Church, but it's really simple. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and that's it. That he, no one goes to the Father except through him.
No, absolutely.
And I think that, and I just looked at this again, so I think it's John 14:6. But I'm not one that remembers those number of scriptures a whole lot. I recognize them, but that's one of them. And I think you bring it back to that simple part of it, and just giving it up to him, and that baptism and renewed spirit is so huge. So.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I know we're running short on time here, but there is one thing I want to ask you, because I know I've done most of the talking here, and it's something I'd like to know about you.
Okay.
Is that if there was something that you could tell the entire world right now, you had a microphone and went into everybody's head, what is the one thing you would tell everybody?
For some reason, I got to the funny part where, because you're one of those guys too that just there's fun. You're a fun country guy. Mickey Mouse is not real. But he created a huge business for it. I don't know why that came, but I mean, I don't know.
Hey, that works, man. There's somebody out there that needs to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, right, and maybe it goes back to, he is the true one you want to listen to, not Mickey Mouse, but or Goofy. But it's been great to visit with you, and maybe we can do this again. And on this side of the state, like 6 hours is nothing for Williston.
Exactly.
Going back the other way is longer for people from Fargo.
Yeah, there's a little more dread going that way, I feel. So,
right.
I'm just kidding. I love Williston.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite places.
No, anything else? How about for you? You want to share or mention to the viewers that happen to watch to the very end?
Oh man, as cliche as it is, I mean, you can leave it on this maybe, but it's like things always do get better, obviously. But if I had that microphone, I could tell anybody something. I would just say, show up for yourself today. It's just a powerful statement that you can reinforce to yourself, and showing up for yourself can look different in a lot of ways because we're all at different parts of our life. Because one person is here in their life and one person might be here doesn't mean they both can't show up for themselves. And I know one of the big motivators for me is just say in the gym, if I do one thing today, I need to show up for myself today. I need to do one thing for myself, and that's whether it's I need to be active, and whether that's in the gym or I need to do this with work or I need to do this, but show up and make sure you make yourself feel fulfilled today. Don't forget that you are a person before you're an employee, a husband or wife or a friend.
Yeah, well said. You're wise behind your years. Then sometimes you get gray. Not sure if I'm wise or not, but thank you. And you also, I've seen some of it, but we want to do a plug. You have done some podcasting. Or do you want to mention that?
Sure.
Okay.
It's not as PG as this. Okay. So for our viewers, be a little. I'm not saying it's rated R, but it's called the Next to You podcast with Colton Brown. It's only available on Spotify right now, but there are a few good ones on there, and I'll even tell you the good episodes so you don't have to sift through them. But if you want to know more about me, that'd be episode 1. But I actually got to do an interview with one of my best friends, which is episode 7, I believe. And he was my
one with Billy.
And that was just such an amazing experience. If you want to just see what getting through adversity looks like and coming out on the other side of some negative impacts that can happen to one's life, I mean, that'd definitely be one to listen to and watch.
Episode 7.
Episode 7.
With Billy. And I had Billy is a great young man as well. Okay, sounds good. What kind of drink did you have from Meg-a-Latte?
I get the same thing every time. It is a medium hazelnut iced latte with an extra shot of espresso.
Oh, you got it down. And thank you, Meg, for having us and having this coffee with Cory here in Fargo. Thank you again, Meg-a-Latte. Have a great week.